us about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you get started?
Well, thanks for asking. I think I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I remember that as a kid, I loved to build things, especially forts. And I think that nature of wanting to build things has always been part of my DNA. When I got to be an adult after college, I was a geography major in college. And way back, a long, long time ago, before most of you were born, I also happen to love computers, which was pretty strange. And I think like a lot of really great entrepreneurial ideas, when you jam two things together that have never been jammed together before, you have the opportunity for some great success. So for me, that was one of the co-founders of MapQuest, one of the first internet darlings, and about 1.2 billion. We sold that to AOL for about $1.2 billion. As really the first kind of computer mapping web service out there. But I'd been working on that type of thing for about 15 years prior to that.
Tell me, after MapQuest, where did you go from there?
So my journey after MapQuest, like a lot of successful entrepreneurs, went more towards the investment side. And what I ended up doing is running a corporate venture fund for the largest investor into MapQuest for about 3 or 4 years. And I really learned how to be a venture capitalist. And it goes from helping one company to helping multiple companies be successful. And that was really fun because you kind of got to see a different angle into the entrepreneurial business. After that, I've also done my share of angel investing. And I also spent some time being the adult supervision, the adult that gets parachuted into an existing startup to help them go from the current level to the next level. And I did that over the course of about 10 years. So got involved with lots of different entrepreneurial startups, from starting them on my own to working with them to investing in them across about 10 or 15 years.
And how did having all of those different roles affect you and help you to become a better entrepreneurial leader?
Well, I think like most things, when you have access to lots of different experiences, you have a lot to offer. I mean, we all have opinions about things, but I get to now draw upon lots of experiences and share those with entrepreneurs, investors, community leaders alike. I've worked for federal government. I've worked for startups. I've taught classes in colleges and universities. So I've seen a lot. Sometimes I refer to it as career ADD, or always being involved in lots of different things. That's the part that excites me. But out of that comes lots of experiences. And with those experiences, you can look to someone and say, hey, I've been in those shoes before, and here's what I've observed. And that way you can really help others, which is a lot of fun.
So now you're in the Raleigh-Durham area. I understand that that's a really hot spot now for startup companies.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to accomplish in Raleigh-Durham. It's a city, about 2 million people. Actually, it's multiple cities that make up a region of about 2 million people. We'll be probably 3 million by 2025, high growth. 3 large, well-known, top 100 kind of universities of different sizes: Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, and NC State. A very kind of PhD-oriented, large, big internet connection. So we got a lot of great ingredients. But 10 years ago, it wasn't really coming together in terms of startups. There was some activity, but not to the level that we thought there should be. At the same time, I was reading about Techstars and Y Combinator and this new way of helping startups through small investments and lots of mentorship in kind of group settings, and said, well, why not my new town of Raleigh-Durham? Why not here? What can we do to fix that and see what we can do there? And so what we embarked on about 8 to 10 years ago is a group of people came together and said, let's see what we can do to help our region. And what it meant specifically for me and a partner is we put together 2 accelerators inspired by Techstars and learned a lot from them. And they were very open, Brad Feld and David Cohen, and sharing those experiences with us in their accelerator. And we modeled our accelerator after that and invested in over 42 companies and put about $5 million into play. But as importantly, what we ended up doing is getting involved with probably 10 to 15 other kind of community leaders from economic development people, from government people, academics, other entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, angel investors, small funds. All of us came together to figure out how we could work together to make our community better. And that's probably one of the most proudest experiences I've had in doing that for Raleigh-Durham. And what I would share with you today is, it's hard to pinpoint the numbers, but probably, we're talking about, at least 2,000 startup to early stage companies. Those companies, as they start to kind of mature, are typically raising about $500 million in venture capital a year. This is just for software tech, probably double that for life sciences and pharma and medical technology, which we're also happen to be a pretty strong community in. But more importantly, people are connected, and we're able to kind of help entrepreneurs really kind of find the resources they need in a much quicker fashion. So it's really a great story in a sleepy little southern U.S. town.
Now you're with Techstars. What is Techstars doing to help the entrepreneurial startup scene?
Well, hopefully most of you know a little bit about Techstars. We're the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. And in that mission, what you should focus on is the part about helping entrepreneurs succeed. And we want to help entrepreneurs from idea to finding an exit for their company and everything in between. And so we serve that mostly through our accelerators, which we now run up 40 plus all over the world and expanding at 6 to 8 new accelerator programs a year. Each one of those programs invests and mentors 10 companies at a time. So you can do the math. We're upwards of 400 plus new investments a year on top of the 1,400 or so investments we've made to date, and growing. And our footprint is for those accelerators are now in places like Paris and Berlin and Melbourne, Australia, and Singapore, and more every day. Frankly, I can't even keep track. That's an unbelievable engine that really helps entrepreneurs kind of take their idea to the next step and help them secure the resources, including capital, after they leave our 3-month accelerator program. But if that's the kind of the traditional part of the business or the core part of the business, over the last few years, we've done a great job of expanding that. A few years ago, we acquired the company that helps put together startup weekends and startup weeks. I know you all have run a few down here. And these are great, startup weekends are great experience, great opportunities for a local region to try to tease out more entrepreneurs and let them kind of try on their entrepreneurial muscles over a kind of a weekend, 54 hours. And to date, we run upwards of about 1,000 of those a year. They're all volunteer run in your local communities, and that number is still growing. So imagine that, there's upwards of 25 to 30,000 people who partake in a startup weekend or a startup week, which is a week-long celebration of the startup community in a geographic area. So that's a huge impact that we could help, again, serve entrepreneurs maybe more at the beginning of their journey, at their idea phase. But we also thought there was more. And so about 1.5 years ago, Brad Feld, author of Startup Communities, kind of the seminal book on how you can help create your own community and build it and go forward with that. So Brad and David and I got together and said, geez, I think we can do more. Collectively, we have these experiences, mine in Raleigh-Durham, and as an investor and entrepreneur, their experience in not just Boulder, but in these other cities that we're operating in. How can we bring all those collective experiences together and find a way to materially help people like you here in Campinas to say, how can we take our community to the next level? And so that's the journey we've been on for the last 1.5 years.
Can you give us maybe a few of the things that a community can do to positively impact their startup community?
It's a great question because there's no easy answer. And it turns out that building a community is just as hard as building a company. There's multiple levels, multiple stages, and you have to make different decisions that impact your company or your community differently as you mature. So what we've done is we've outlined kind of 5 key elements right now that we want to kind of figure out and help communities with. And so those 5 elements are culture, density, talent, capital, and institutional support. By institutional support, I mean government, colleges, universities, and large corporations. Those have a role in a startup community as well. So let me go through them again. Culture, density, talent, capital, and institutional support. And what we do when we engage with the community is the first thing we do is spend a couple weeks doing an assessment or an audit. We have to figure out what's happening. And we look at these 5 kind of windows into the community and assess what's working, what's not working, or what's not being done, and try to make sure that we talk to a kind of a 360-degree view of everyone in the community, get all of their input to kind of assess what's going on. And once we have kind of an understanding of what's going on, then we can start to make some recommendations and eventually partner with you over a 1 to 3 year period to help augment those things that maybe aren't being focused upon, and try to build those things up so all 5 of those things are kind of working in tandem and growing at the same level. What we find in most communities is that one of those things is pretty weak.
What are some of the communities that you've worked with in your new role?
Yeah, so last year when we got started, we wanted to work with both U.S. communities as well as international communities. So we worked with Cleveland, Ohio, and Richmond, Virginia. What's interesting about Cleveland is here's a top tier U.S. city that's got a long history, 100 plus years of entrepreneurship. But the city's changed. It was a manufacturing city, and it's still in transition to figure out kind of how to be kind of a current, state-of-the-art city and have the kind of people and have the support that new entrepreneurs can get. And they haven't done such a great job there as they're trying to transition from this heritage of a manufacturing city. So we've been working with them. That's been very exciting. I think the other example that would be interesting to you all in the audience is that we've been working with Lima, Peru. Now, as you know, Lima is a pretty sizable city at upwards of 10 million people, and it's it's the engine that makes Peru run, and it's got a great community, but it's only been concentrating on entrepreneurship maybe in the last 3 to 5 years. That's not to say there weren't good entrepreneurs before that, but as a community development, it's really just been the last few years. They run a wonderful conference called the Peru Venture Capital Conference, which I highly recommend. I think there's another one coming up in September. And so we've been working with them over the last year to identify some of their kind of holes and how we could help them grow that city. So those are 2 great examples.
What are some of the challenges that you've faced in doing this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I'll tell you and what I'd love to share with you all today is that probably the single most common issue across all of the communities is that top thing called culture. And what happens in most communities is they kind of flip the things and they concentrate on getting governments and the corporations and maybe some local universities very involved, and then they need to throw some capital. And they build a fund or figure out a way to do grants. And by the way, those are very critical and very important. I don't want to kind of put those down. But really, it has to do with the culture and how people come together and how they support each other, how they create a situation where 1 + 1 + 1 = 10. And what I find in most communities is there's people kind of pulling in the wrong way, and they're trying to run a community like they run a business with lots of controls and trying to engineer success. And communities don't work that way. So probably about 50% or about half of the recommendations and the initiatives we have are about how to start shifting culture, especially with the community leaders. And so when we post-assessment, one of the things that we've developed is a set of tools and a set of methodologies where we work with community leaders to try to start to shift their mindset and to have them kind of do some things that are more community positive than community negative. Many times they don't realize that their actions are actually slowing down the community development. So we want to kind of bring some awareness, some education, and some tools to help them kind of shift their mindset a little bit. And that's pretty exciting because we've seen the effects, the positive effects of when that's done really well.
What are those positive effects?
Well, what you see is you see more entrepreneurs coming out of the woodwork. You see more existing or serial entrepreneurs coming into the community, getting involved because they see the kind of environment that they're used to. And so the more good people that are involved, the more good things can happen.
And when a community decides to sign up for this program with Techstars, what can they expect?
Well, what can they expect? Well, a lot of times, first of all, it's easier for a community sometimes to hear the honest truth from an outsider versus an insider. So I smile when I say my job is to deliver honest feedback kindly. And so what they start to hear is, a real honest assessment of here's what's happening, here's what's not happening, here's what's broken. We typically do that at the end of the assessment in a public forum, so everyone hears the same words and sees the same report at the same time, so there's no agendas. And for the first time, or maybe in the first time in a long time, what a set of people start to see is a real honest view of what we need to do to kind of chart a more successful path. And it's really exciting to see that feedback. I got people that are participating or just listening. We typically get hundreds of people that attend a public readout. And afterwards, I get emails and phone calls, and they say, hey, that was great information. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. I'm now engaged. I now want to get engaged. And so the more people that get engaged, the more positive things can happen. And it's, that's what we want for around the world. We want more and more people involved in the ecosystem. Turns out it's around noon, so as you can hear that clock. I want to end by thanking all of you for listening. As you're probably aware, for now I had a few visa problems in trying to get there, so I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. But I hope to come down again in the fall, another conference, and share with you some of the insights and meet all the entrepreneurs and community leaders and see if there's a chance for us to come into Campinas and help you all. Thanks. Have a great rest of the conference, and I appreciate you listening.